Shrimati Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nirvasesha Sunnivari Pashtatara Satanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we are on the chapter is 14 and it's the Sankhya of Sankalpa. Now the book is entitled, as you already know, Sankalpa Kumudi. So now Maharaj is going to start introducing that aspect of the book, the need for making specific Sankalpas that are relevant to our specific position in spiritual life. And so he's now going to open that up in the next few chapters, in this chapter and in the next chapter. He will give some examples of Sankalpas from our scripture. So Sankalpa, as you know, it's a determination. So Maharaj is focusing on the point that often devotees do not make these specific Sankalpas, or do not make these determinations in order to advance through the different stages of devotional service. So the last couple of chapters has been quite analytical, because Maharaj describing how we got into this mess in the material world. And the idea is, with this knowledge, how we can help to elevate ourselves by being more in knowledge of the mess we are in. Okay, so let's Anupama, she has a hand for reading there, so you can begin reading. And perhaps we'll stop at every page or so, or we might stop in between, just to clarify that we all know what's going on, what's being said, etc. Quite a few devotees with us this evening, more joining all the time. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
You can.
Prabhu, will you tell me where to stop, or do I just stop after?
I will tell you when to stop, Mother.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I will indicate that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. In this chapter, we shall combine the workings of the mind, intelligence, false ego, and the consciousness as they relate to a devotee's sankalpa through the stages of sadhana. Readers may question why in the previous chapter we elaborated on the process of creation, the formation of the subtle body, and how its parts work and interact. The answer, as stated in the beginning of chapter 10, is that knowledge of these activities is integral to understanding our goal. Throughout Srila Prabhupada's books, we are encouraged, both by his divine grace as well as the book's original authors, like Vyasa, not to shy away from an analytical study of the components of Krishna conscious philosophy. Even as a child, Prahlad Maharaj gave the treasury of Vaishnava truths. Sober and expert persons should search for the spirit soul with minds purified through analytical study in terms of the soul's connection with and distinction from all things that undergo creation, maintenance, and destruction. In this chapter, we introduce an analogy that compares Sankalpa to movements on a ladder. The evolution of the subtle and gross material elements mirrors the process of moving down a ladder from pure consciousness to contaminated consciousness. Much same dynamics are also applicable to moving up the ladder, signifying the determined steps involved in spiritual progress. In other words, knowledge of certain features of how living entities become conditioned is useful in knowing how they become liberated. Narad also uses an analogy to illustrate the transmigration of the subtle body from one gross body to the next by showing how the body created in a dream is abandoned when one wakes to his actual living body. The Acharya also explains that the mental condition of a person indicates something of his previous life and also of what he will be in future life. Indeed, this system of comparison is found throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it is one of the 10 types of evidence accepted by the Vedic epistemology called Upamana. A most beautiful analogy of the transmigration of the soul is also spoken by Narad. The caterpillar transports itself from one leaf to another by capturing one leaf before giving up the other. Similarly, according to his previous work, the living entity must capture another body before giving up the one he has. This is because the mind is the reservoir of all kinds of desires. One first port of call is how the living entity makes his appearance in the elements of creation. The following paragraph describes how this takes place.
Okay, we'll just pause there. We'll just pause there. So I think Marge is recapping again what he's mentioned in the previous chapters as well. It's from subtle to gross, and how often that's an existential question that is often asked. Why, how did we turn away from the Lord? You know, and the answer was given, I think Maharaj was quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that it's a, first of all, there's an indifference. And from that platform of indifference, one then embraces the material energy, you know. So,
sorry to disturb you. Can I ask which chapter we are reading? So
we're chapter 14, Mavanima, chapter 14, the Sankhya of Sankalpa, and we just read the first 2 pages. Yeah. So there's going to be an analogy that's going to be used here. It's worth going over that again, so we're sure. So the evolution goes from subtle to gross, and then that's why these examples is given here. According to the subtle body, then that's how you prepare the gross body. Yeah. So again, the analogy is of how one's moving down the ladder. So we move down, we have pure consciousness, then we end up with contaminated consciousness. Yeah. So it's the same dynamics is used in going back up the ladder. Yeah. So the more we become purified consciousness, then the more we can tread the different rungs up to our original constitutional position. Yeah. So down, now in Krishna, in spiritual life, we're trying to go back up. Yeah. And then Maharaj quotes an analogy from Narada Muni about the caterpillar. Yeah. Before it leaves one leaf, it's on another leaf. So before we leave this body, we are already creating our next body. Yeah. Anyone seen those videos or those pictures where I've seen pictures where someone's gross body looks very much like an animal. Their facial features resemble very much different species of life. There's pictures like that. Birds, foxes, chickens, like that. So sometimes it can be seen. It manifests in the gross body before actually one leaves the gross body. Sometimes some indications are there. But anyway, is that clear where we are? Clear where we're going? As clear as can be. All right, we can read on. I think Chandravali Mabu, you have your hand up. You can read 243.
Prior to creation, the Supreme Lord rested upon the snake bed, Ananta, absorbed in divine trance, Yoga Nindra. At that time, both the living entities and the external energy were dormant. Desiring to give the living entities a chance for perfection, Mahavishnu inspired the time factor to interact with the Mahatattva, in which the living entities then became active through the incitement of the modes of material nature. Thus began the unfortunate Jiva's futile effort at material happiness, caused by forgetfulness of where real happiness lies with Krishna. The Mahatattva is the junction of matter and spirit. The shed of pure consciousness within the false ego is manifested in three ways, as cause, effect, and doer. Srimad Bhagavatam says that these developments all take place on a subtle mental plane.
All right, we understand that. Takes place in the subtle mental plane. So Maharaj is coming from, interesting, coming from Mahavishnu. So there's quite a few quotes. There is a few quotes in the Bhagavatam that describes the source of the Jiva is Mahavishnu. Okay, so that might be a bit controversial because the source of the Jiva are going back. Okay. So here, Maharaj is quoting the Jivas being in the body of Mahavishnu. Yeah. Question is, so where does Mahavishnu come from? Well, one, he's eternal, but from our perspective, everything comes from Krishna. So anyway, without going into that controversy, where does the soul come from? Just note that Maharaj is taking it from Mahavishnu. Yeah. So with the Lord's potency, or the Lord's potency causes enacted through the modes of material nature, the jivas become covered and forget where real happiness is, which is with Krishna. Anyway, so you can carry on this. The Sankhya is very technical, so good if we can try and go paragraph by paragraph and see if we can follow the logic. You want to carry on reading, Mother Chandravali, or you had a question?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
In the paragraph above, as in scripture, terms like then, when, and after.
You froze up.
These words give a sense of sequence and chronology that may not be exactly accurate, for our investigation is in a realm wherein time does not yet function as we experience it. Nonetheless, we must use such expressions to facilitate communication. Where time does follow the linear progression to which we are accustomed, such terms really do express an actual sequence of events.
Yeah, you understand that? Because, well, one sense where we say everything comes from Krishna.
Yeah.
That sense, like, so means Mahavishnu comes from Krishna. But Mahavishnu is eternal. You understand? It's mentioned that the jivas come from, but the jivas are eternal. So again, so I think we mentioned this before. So from our platform of moving or understanding dimensions in this world, when we try and correlate what happens in a place where there is no time, it's very difficult to actually comprehend. So Maharaj is actually saying that may not be the case, but at least for our understanding, there's a chronology, what happens. You follow? For us, it's written from Mahavishnu, then came from Krishna, came Mahavishnu, then the jivas, then like that, and the creation and the material energy, and this came about, and that came about. Well, the material energy does come about. So sometimes it gets, but actually Mahavishnu and the expansions and the jiva, they're all eternal. So anyway, so some things will remain inconceivable to us, no matter how much we try to comprehend it. But you like to continue reading? Well,
okay. False ego, mind, intelligence, and senses, followed by the material elements. Srila Prabhupada's translation of the verse of Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this sequence. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. At first, there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. Additionally, while we are speaking of such diverse products of creation and their intricate interactions, it is good to keep in mind the following. From the point of view of oneness, the subtle and gross bodies, sense perception, and their objects are all manifestation of the one absolute truth, while at the same time, from the perspective of duality, the supreme reality remains separate from them. Let us continue with the living entity's desire for independence, which is the vehicle by which he enters the creation at Mahavishnu's bidding. Desire is the foundation of Sankalpa. Without it, no living entity, conditioned or liberated, would act. Desire may be carried over from a previous creation, or it may be original, the cause of fall down from one's role as a servant of the Lord. That desire is, as everything else, dormant until the will of the Supreme awakens false ego within the Maha Tattva, upon which both the Jiva and his desires are active. At this stage, false ego is general, meaning that it does not reflect the details of the living entity's individual desires. However, with the mixing of time element, individual desires become activated, and then false ego is similarly characterized and individualized.
All right.
Okay.
Do you know what's going on there, Chandra Valimova? You can repeat back.
You know, like the Jiva is dormant, and then with the agitation of Mahatattva, then like Krishna, Mahavishnu is glancing. So that means then, this is my kind of thinking, how the modes of material natures are created there, and false ego, and then Jivas are like thrown out in a way.
Yeah, basically correct. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, but interesting detail here is that everything is based on desire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so that, in one sense, that wayward desire is the original cause of our fall down, but it doesn't happen straight away. Yeah, we enter into. It seems like we enter into the Mahatattva of Mahavishnu, and then the Supreme Lord at some point awakens to false ahankara. So in other words, we can't be in Maya without Krishna's help. Yeah, so that we desire, but Krishna enables that wayward desire by manifesting the Mahatattva and consequently the material world. We don't have the power to enjoy separately from Krishna without Krishna's intervention. It sounds a bit contradicting, but yeah, Krishna actually gives us the ability to enjoy separately from him. That's why in the verse 15:15, Krishna gives knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So if you desire to enjoy separately from him, you have to forget Krishna. So Krishna facilitates that through the whole process of material creation. So we can act out that illusion of trying to be happy without Krishna.
Prabhu, can I quickly ask a question then?
Please.
Sorry, Prabhu. I was thinking, so that means Lord is the one, Lord gives us the false ego, awakens our false ego. And
Yeah,
just
in other words, everything's manifesting from the Lord, the material energy, which includes the false ego.
Yeah, so that is the main reason.
Yeah, but all of it's based on our desire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's based on our desire.
To be separate.
Yeah. That's why Sankalpa is important, because it means you create or you focus on other desires. Yeah, you focus on other desires. So we have so that's called to make a Sankalpa, desire. I was reading about
So,
desire yesterday. Was given a class on the Karma Gayatri, and everything is based on karma or based on desire. So it's so it's that. Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, desire. Yeah, so Krishna
so
enables us.
Prabhu, can we say where there is false ego, there is Maya. Where there is Maya, there is false ego. Can we say that way, Prabhu?
We can, yes. That's what actually the whole creation is based on false identity. We have it, therefore it's based on false ego, ahankara.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Right. I'd like to read on. Want to carry on? No? Or
I
any-
was just thinking, just how one is going down, like desire to be independent, not to be with Krishna. So then you are in this
Yeah.
creative mark, and then how you are then with the three modes of material nature and your false ego.
Yeah.
And in that you are then desiring, going the wrong way in a way, right?
Yeah.
So
And it's
then
all based, yeah, and it is all based on desire. And the
yes.
particular desires that manifest from us, it depends on our guna sangha or association with the modes of nature. So
Yes.
yeah, so
And then as you take the steps with your desires, towards your desires, you're going to be tangled up more and more and more, right?
yeah, that's it.
That's how you, yeah, okay.
Murli Prabhu, can I just ask you,
Yes,
please?
please.
You as you saying, as you were saying that desire. So, but if we are in this path of Krishna consciousness and we are determined, and obviously we're trying to not to have that desirement in our life as much as we can, and just carry on in our sadhana. So that will help us not to have the desire, does it? Or because obviously we are focusing more in Krishna consciousness in our spiritual path.
Of course, and this book is Maharaj is analyzing that part. He's trying to help us to make specific desires or make specific sankalpas. So it can't be too general. It has to be very specific. We may have a general idea of I'm going to go back to God here. I'm going to be Krishna conscious. But then we have to come down to, okay, let me desire, not to think like this. Let the specifics of our conditioning, we desire to reach a specific stage. So let me desire to be steady in Krishna consciousness. Let me desire to come to the platform. But basically, you're right. Basically, what you're saying is correct. Yeah. And that's what this study is about.
So desire, yeah. So if you can have desire, like obviously we want to get to our Bhava Bhakti as well as Prema Bhakti later on. So that desire probably is good to have that, isn't it?
Of course.
Sankalpa as the
of course. That's that's the whole idea. But that desire, as when we're reading Sudha Bhakti Chintamani, then that desire should take on a specific form of lobha and greed.
Greed, yeah.
And that desire should be that you're desiring Krishna so much that you're crying for him. Yeah. And then Krishna, and that's a whole nother subject where Krishna becomes subservient to your pure desire. But at the moment we have to, like again I was speaking on the Gayatri mantras, that we have to take shelter of Mad and Mohan because we desire matter in our conditioned stage. So we have to get over that, start desiring Krishna. But in essence, what you're saying is perfectly correct. But this study we're doing here just goes right into that, analyzes desire and helps to build our desire. Yeah.
Okay, one more thing I was thinking. So we following Krishna conscious. So then our desires, actions should be towards of Krishna conscious progress, right?
Yeah.
But even
correct.
that, Yeah, so even then in that state, because we are all at different levels, different thinking, different modes of material nature work with us during the days, whatever, you know. So
Yeah.
then you start acting in that way. So that also is impediment towards your spiritual progress.
Yeah, it is, because the desire has to be pure.
Yes,
The moment
Krishna
it's
conscious.
mixed. The
Your
moment
action
it's
should
mixed.
be
Yeah.
okay.
Anyadinasada sunyam Gana Kamari Anavritam Unukule Krishnam Silana Bhakti Uttama. So that's what we're doing at the moment. We are trying to purify our desire. But even in the activities of bhakti that we do, it may be mishra. It may be mixed. You know, you may be, maybe not. You may be serving Krishna, but there may be a mixture of you want to be known as a great servant of Krishna. Just say an exaggerated point, you know, or yeah, it may be mixed. So yeah, we're trying to come to pure desire. Yeah, and gradually, and it happens gradually by hearing and taking shelter and studying like we're doing. We can become more refined in our desire. It's just so that ultimately we desire like the residents of Vrindavan desire. They only desire to please Krishna. Yeah, they don't. That's their only life and soul is to please Krishna. Yeah. Please Radha, please Krishna. So we're doing that, trying to get there. All right. Jiva, you can read a little bit more. Other something to just according to the Jiva's desire. I think we're on.
Yeah. Do you want me to read a bit more?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay. According to the Jiva's desire, karma, and disposition, the living entity accedes to a corresponding mode of nature that then creates a suitable molded mind, intelligence, senses, and eventually body. The mind is created from the mode of goodness, intelligence and the senses from passion, and the material elements from ignorance. The sense of identification with this subtle and gross body, the false ego, is then adapted portions of the Mahatattva, and the awareness that serves the senses of false identity is the contaminated consciousness. Okay. Sukha Goswami gives a brilliant description of the false ego and its function as but a part of the absolute truth. Although a cloud is a product of the sun and is also made visible by the sun, it nevertheless creates darkness for the viewing eye, which is another partial expansion of the sun. Similarly, material false ego, a particular product of the absolute truth, made visible by the absolute truth, obstructs the individual soul, another partial expansion of the absolute truth from realizing the absolute truth. Wow, that makes it, well, makes a little bit of sense.
Okay, perhaps you can just explain that a bit. I got lost a bit. I was trying to find a button to press on this Zoom thing, and just that few seconds distraction, then I lost it. Can you just perhaps
How the sun is made visible? It's not creating darkness for the viewing, for the eye, right? In the same way, the false ego is blocking our knowledge of the absolute truth.
Yeah. Okay.
It obstructs individual soul. It's obstructing us from understanding, realizing the absolute truth.
Yeah. Let me just read
That's
this
kind of
paragraph.
my bit of it.
Although a cloud is a product of the sun, it is also made visible by the sun. It nevertheless creates darkness for the viewing eye, which is another partial expansion of the sun. Similarly, material false ego, a particular product, as we mentioned, of the absolute truth, made visible by the absolute truth, obstructs the individual soul, another partial expansion of the absolute truth from realizing the absolute truth. All right, so
It makes sense.
it's just that same point that to be in Maya, we need Krishna. Krishna
Yeah.
facilitates our being in illusion. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Perhaps we have Mother Kunamai, you'd like to read? There, top of 245.
If the Jiva's desire is original and he has not previously been in the material world, he, according to Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, first takes birth as Brahma. Srila Prabhupada writes, both the Lord and the living entity, being qualitatively spiritual soul, have tendency for peaceful enjoyment. But when the part of Supreme Personality of Godhead unfortunately wants to enjoy independently without Krishna, he is put in the material world, where he begins his life as Brahma and is gradually degraded to the status of an ant or a worm in a stew.
Hare Krishna.
Can I quickly ask something here? So
Yes.
does anyone, any jiva who is coming down, do they then take a position of Brahma in any universe and then come down? From this, it sounds like that. That's why I was
That's what it says. That's one of the mysteries. That's one of the mysterious statements here in the Bhagavatam. Some of us might have heard this before, but yes. Now, the Brahma, now there's different types, there's different Brahmas.
Yeah.
So some Brahmas are Suddha, pure, but other Brahmas are not. So they go down, they fall down. Yeah. So just remember that pastime. It may be inconceivable for us. It maybe is, but this pastime where Lord Brahma went to go and see Krishna in Dwarka, and he thought he was the only Brahma, and then millions and millions and millions and millions of Brahmas. So don't forget, there's millions and millions and millions and millions and trillions of universes. And in those universes, there's millions and trillions and trillions and trillions of Brahmas. So one of the first stations coming down is the position of a Lord Brahma. But then one is not, if one is not a particular Brahma which is possessed of purity, then they come down. So eventually they take from the status of Brahma down to, as Prabhupada says, an ant or worm in store. So that's every jiva. So every insect you see, the entry point is coming. It says here, so we've got to, well, you don't have to accept it if you don't want to.
No.
I'm not saying you specifically, I'm saying people may not.
You know, there is one Sanskrit word says, Aham Brahmasmi.
Yeah. No, that I'm a spirit soul.
Yeah, that's Aham Brahmasmi. Why did you bring that up, Mother? Shoda? Sahachari?
Because here we are mentioning that everyone who comes down is a Brahma, like thinking that they're on that platform and then gradually they fall down. So Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahma, like something like that.
Yeah, you could look at it, but that's it. That word's used in a different context. Okay. That's a Mayavadi statement that we are all supreme. We are all supreme. So Aham Brahmasmi, but this Brahma, it's a different context. But still, what you're saying is of value. That's what happens. Yeah. All right.
When you Brahma, you are at such a different level. You would be going up.
Yeah, as I was saying, there's Brahmas go in different directions. Yeah, not all Brahmas are what the Brahma that we read about, who's in charge of our universe. Yeah, obviously, because they come down. Yeah.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah.
So where do? Yeah. Right.
So we would.
Yeah. You like to continue?
Sorry, I like the idea that don't desire to be Brahma or anything now because you've already been there and you come down. So don't desire to go up that way now.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. We've become.
Had that position already.
Yeah. Tried that, been there, done that.
Yeah, Done that,
I've done that, tried that, seen that. Now let me be a servant of Krishna again. Let me not desire to lord it forever. Yeah. Okay, Kuruma, you like to continue? Yeah.
However, the living entity is returning to the material world. He shoulders earlier desires and an earlier fate and accepts a deserving position. At this stage, the components for living entities' first Sankalpa are assembled and ready to put to use. In the case where the Jiva accepts his role as a human, the enchantress named Desire bewilders his intelligence, brings him under the influence of mind, and makes him an instrument of the false ego. In this way, the designation of the soul becomes the mind, and so its mental impressions inspired by the external energy become a source of further bondage. Having taken the soul hostage, the mind, lacking discrimination, makes impulsive decisions. When it accepts a certain direction of life, it makes a corresponding commitment, which then becomes its first sankalpa, the first step down of a figurative ladder.
Okay, so just a little pause there. So this we have read in the previous chapters. Marge was describing about false ego, the mind, the senses, etc., and how they interrelate with each other, the intelligence, the transient false ego, that he's mentioned. But now he's bringing in the point how all of that leads to desire, leads to material desire, that engagement within the material body, and then the false ego then fuels misidentification with the mind. Yeah. So then we become enslaved and subservient to that which is inferior, which is the mind and senses, because of false ego, false identification. Yeah. So, yeah, then which then becomes its first sankalpa, the first step down. So we're going down the ladder now. Hopefully at some point Raj is going to describe coming up the ladder. But now we're looking at the journey coming down. Yeah. You can read on a bit more if you like. Yeah.
A similar example of a first sankalpa is when aforementioned Brahma neglects the direction of the Vedas and, bewildered by his own creation, wants to enjoy in it. Thus he takes a human body, forfeiting both his illustrious position and his chance for liberation. In the introduction to this chapter, we emphasized a lack of clarity in chronology during the initial stage of creation. Because an event, a sankalpa, is time dependent, there is an equal lack of clarity as to exactly where this first step of the Jiva into Maya is. We therefore take the maturing of the elements needed for a sankalpa as the moment of the first step down the ladder of entanglement. Degradation is a process that feeds and amplifies itself, just as the false ego inspires the mind to material attainment, thus soiling the consciousness and further obscuring the goal of life. Sense gratification further nourishes the false ego and empowers the mind to fresh mischief. In this way, one wrong step leads to another, and it does not take long before one has fallen from the status of a human or a Brahma to that of an insect. It is said that the mind is colored by fruitive activity, karma atmaka, which means that all its activities are equally colored by karma. Sukadev Goswami tells Maharaj Parikshit that Lord Sankarshan is the presiding deity of false ego, and that it is he who dictates to the lusty soul, I am the enjoyer, this world is for me, Krishna reminds us of the same principle in Bhagavad Gita. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. According to the type of body for which the Jiva is qualified, and according to the dictates of his fate, the infatuated mind seeks sense objects appropriate to the imagined fulfillment of its desire. In doing so, the mind enlists the intelligence in how to best eke out sense gratification from those objects with the never to be fulfilled promise of happiness. Of course, the mind does not remain idle, but does its part by continually accepting and rejecting according to the newly surfacing circumstances, dragging the intelligence along with it as a willing and sometimes an unwilling accomplice. The mind thus creates pious and impious activities, as well as their concomitant karma, thereby conditioning the soul to a specific bodily appearance and behavior. In this way, the mind brings about the birth in the variety of bodies and remains mired in the modes of material nature, just like an independent, uncontrolled elephant. The result is that it becomes submerged in the self-made pool of pious and impious activities, all because of a hopeless ideal that it will satisfy its senses. One may argue that by performing pious activities under the highest mode of nature, the false ego dissipates. However, this is not so. Neither can one attain liberation by piety. Narad Muni assures King Parichenabhari, as long as there exists a subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, senses, sense objects, and the reactions of the material qualities, the consciousness of false identification and its relative objective, the gross body exists as well.
Okay, perhaps just pause there, Mum. Just pause there.
Thank you.
Any questions on that or reflections or comments?
We are going down, really going down.
Yeah,
Mind
it's
and
describing how we came down.
yeah, how we're going down.
Yeah. But it's so you can see how this statement that Prabhupada said is very important, because we are not these bodies. You know, the whole mess we are in is because of this material body. This material body means the gross and the subtle aspect. We have the mind, yeah, the subtle aspect. So our whole engagement in material nature is due to misidentification. So that statement cannot be said enough. We are not these bodies. That is the key to undoing the whole mess, to actually understand that we are not these gross or subtle body. Yeah. But because the whole thing is just about the body, the whole. And interesting, we read about Brahma there, we heard about Brahma here, where he desires to enjoy his own creation. So that's not the Brahma that we read about in Brahma Samhita. Yeah. He actually creates it. He has the desire to create, which is manifest from within the heart by Krishna because of his previous life. So he desires to create, but he does not know how. So he, as we know, he does tapa. And he gets, again, the Gayatri mantras, he gets the Brahma Gayatri, he gets the Gopal mantra, he gets the Kama Gayatri. And from that, he creates, but he doesn't want to enjoy that creation. But here, this particular, the Brahmas that we were, we desired to enjoy that creation. Yeah. So therefore, Krishna as our best friend gives us the, okay. At the same time, he tries to encourage us, but if we force the issue, then he will let us. I might have given this example before. I remember when I was very young. When I was very young, I had this desire. I would see people smoking, and I wanted to copy them. you know. So my mother, obviously, she would also just, no, she would tell me off, you know. And one time we was walking through a graveyard, as you do, a shortcut, and there was this cigar on the floor, you know, still smoking. So of course I looked at it, and this time my mother said, "Go on then." She let me do it. I picked it up, put it in my mouth, and you can guess what happened. I nearly died. Well, I didn't literally nearly die, but you know, I wasn't very pleasant. And my mother was standing there smiling, you know. At that point, I got the message, and I never tried again. Of course, until I became a stupid teenager. It didn't last long. But you get the point. So sometimes Krishna will. Sometimes we have to go. Sometimes we have to go through it. We have to go through it, yeah, to realize that we're not going to find happiness there. So Krishna is our friend. He knows that, because he's not going to force us. He's created individuality. So he's not going to create us like robots so that we don't have any individuality. No, because love is based on individuality. So anyway, so he creates this playground. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, you mentioned about individuality, but this karma coming behind, isn't it? Not only Krishna, our karma only makes us, this individuality is coming from our karma. It's karma joined with material goods.
Yeah, I mean, the specific way it manifests is coming from our karma, the specific personalities that we have based on the mind, etc., and our conditioning. Yeah. So the specifics of it is, yeah, that's why we're all different people.
Yeah.
That's why we're all different, because we've all engaged in slightly different activities. So therefore we have different complex of subtle body. So we have, and that's, so anyway, so individuality is created for Krishna's pleasure.
I was thinking, can we think like this, Prabhu? If you come out of the airport, many people will be having same suitcases, but if you open those suitcases inside, it's different items.
Yeah, it's a very good example. Yeah, you certainly know if you pick up the wrong suitcase, when you get it home, when you open it up, you're going to pretty soon realize. Yeah. Yeah, so you could say that, that's a very good example, actually. We all got human bodies, we've got noses, we've got eyes, etc. But within, it's teeming with different. Also, you could say basically we have different personalities, but basically the desires are pretty much the same. They're gross, you know. Pretty just to enjoy the senses, the tongue, the genitals, etc. When it comes down to it, but we will have individuality. It's the sort of
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yesterday, in a class, was it yesterday in a class, like karma? Okay, we go through the karma. We're going to get what we're going to get, but you can kind of change it by performing devotional services. I mean, it's going to be there, some like a fan. It's going to be there. Some of it you're going to get it, but by performing devotional activities, you will change your consciousness. So you will start changing actions, you know.
Yeah, that's when everything changes for the good.
Yes.
That's when everything starts to become auspicious. That's the whole. Yeah, that is why devotional service is so glorious, because all the activities that we actually do is transforming us, is purifying us, is purifying our subtle body. We are giving up material desire. Yeah, exactly right.
If you're going through your karmas, because you are trying to become a devotee, you will be then acting in a different way to what you would normally act if you wasn't a devotee.
Yeah,
so then it's changing. Your consciousness will be different. Your actions will be different.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it may well be that we have to go through the same karma. It may well or might not be, but by Krishna's arrangement, it might be much the same. But it's how we react to that.
Mhm.
You know, how we react to that. We should act in a devotional way, or we see it as Krishna's mercy upon us. Now, sometimes that may be difficult. So what that means you're becoming free of your karma. But
Mm.
without that, persons become very, if it's bad, they become very embittered and very resentful, and maybe become more wicked and take it out on other people and thus create more bad karma. Or if it's good karma, they may become completely intoxicated and full of false ego and pride, and thereby commit various other materialistic sinful activities and become further entangled. Yeah, perhaps let's let Suniti Priya read, shall we? You haven't been with us for a little while. So you can read,
Thank you.
last few minutes,
Yes,
5 minutes.
Muliku, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Bhakti devotional, thank you. Bhakti devotional service dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort.
Is that where we left off?
No, I think we were up a bit.
We're up a bit.
As devotee well known?
I think
Okay, I beg your pardon. Sorry.
okay, yeah.
As devotee well known,
Okay, yeah.
it is
No,
only
it was,
devotional service. Even above that,
the mind.
as long as there's
Suniti Priya, go up
the
to
mind. Okay, sorry, the mind.
No,
Yeah?
one may argue, and then we can go down from there.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One may argue that by performing pious activities under the higher modes of nature, the false ego disperses. However, this is not so. Sorry, yes. Neither can one attain liberation by pity. Narad Muni assures King
we did read this.
I think it was read. Yeah, you did read.
Right.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
You were right.
Anyway. Now, as long as there exists the subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, senses, sense objects, and reaction of the material qualities, the consciousness of force identification and its relative objective, the gross body exists as well. As devotees well known, it is only devotional service that effectively dissolves the outside subtle body and so brings at the end to karma and the false ego.
As
this
we just
is
said. Carry on. We just said exactly that.
This is
I wanted to recap this.
Yeah. Carry on.
Okay. This is brilliantly exemplified by Lord Kapil to his mother. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as a fire in the stomach digests all we eat. In the downward journey of the soul, the mind is increasingly overcome by ignorance and so habitually engaged in the sense in fulfilling desire and taking successive sankalpa. In such bewildered conditions, the unfortunate living entity does not know that it will forfeit its valuable human form. It forgets that consequences of impious deeds is that it becomes forced into species of life in which it has no say over its acts. As an animal, its only determination will be what is dictated by the instinct and due to its
unique to its
species.
So that's
unique,
That's a good point that Marge is bringing us, just to remind us that actually, as he's already said, though, Brahma down to an ant or a worm in store, that actually the Jiva ultimately due to ignorance, loses the human form of life and becomes an animal. Yeah.
Prabhu,
One of the
I
greatest
was
tragedies of
thinking,
this material world. Yeah.
so in, I don't know, I didn't understand, but I'm just having a doubt. So are we all first Brahma and then become degraded to all these stages?
Yeah,
So
that's what we read. That's what
That's
is
what-
explained. We become, and specifically the Brahma we created, then we decide to enjoy what we created. So then we got a human body. And then by entanglement in the mind, the senses, etc., and the creators of karma, then gradually we can go down to the lower species of life. Even insects is mentioned, so from Brahma down to Indragopa, down to, yes. So yes, we're just reconfirming that. Yes.
So we may be our previous, and also we have earlier gone down, and maybe then now coming up, and reptiles, and now we are coming up.
Yes,
This is just like
that's what we hope to do. Now we've grabbed hold of the right, we grabbed hold of the raft, we've grabbed hold of the rope of the disciplic succession. Now we're trying to pull ourselves up and out,
oh my God, Krishna Chaitanya.
Yeah, it's good you invoke Krishna Chaitanya, because by his grace we could go up. No idea.
Go up and up first.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
Mata, we've been down. We need to go up now.
yeah.
We have
Yeah.
Mars
enough roundabout
has
now.
mentioned, perhaps we've closed, it's just 7 o'clock. So Mars has mentioned before that that's why it's such a tragedy when someone does take to devotional service, but then they fall away to gross materialistic activities again, where they came so close after billions and billions of lifetimes and billions of creations. Of course, there's no loss in one sense, it's said, no loss of diminution. So they're better off than the gross materialist, but still it's a tragedy that someone retreats from the path of light and they turn backwards towards the path of darkness, and they go back into the forest after making their way
Basically,
up,
reverse.
after seeing the
It's a
light.
reverse.
But that's Devi Hi Gushan, that's Devi Isha Gunamayi, that's the power of the material energy. That's why we have to stay in association with devotees, and we read, we study, and we chant. We have regular practice of sadhana so that we can stay progressive and not look back in the forest and decide to go back. Yeah. To plow the field, we have to keep our eyes set ahead. You cannot plow the field by looking back over your shoulder. That's a quote from Jesus. Yeah, he who looks over the back when he's plowing the field cannot actually go forward. Something like that.
Well, we are trying our very hard, Muli Prabhu.
Yes.
Back.
We're trying very hard.
Yeah, that's good. So it's just hit 7 o'clock. So sorry I didn't get to read for so long, but it's only the prayer, but nice to hear you reading. So where do we leave off? So I can put my bookmark in the right place.
Still,
Huh?
yet while
It's a
While
I think it's the last one was
Okay.
that one.
Anyway,
unique to the spices.
Yeah, so quite a sobering reading this evening, kind of analyzing our position, but things will get more positive, okay? When we start going up the ladder.
Thank you for the encouragement.
Hare Krishna. Which you are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Thank you for the lovely
so
class,
much.
Muli
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna.
It was wonderful.
I
Thank you
hope
so much.
it went well. Hare
It's
Krishna.
great.
Oh, it
Hare
was
Bol.
lovely. Thank you very much.
It's great, Muli Prabhu.
Jai.
So,
Thank you.
Chandravali,
Thank you.
shall I just press end here? Or shall I make someone else a host? Because sometimes I can't hear you, Mother.
He's saying something. I don't know.
Tomorrow is 6 o'clock. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, you okay with
I'm just asking, shall I end here? Because that means everyone
Yeah.
will.
Yeah,
Hare-
that's fine. Right,
Okay,
thank
okay.
you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.